A store manager just humiliated a little girl in a wheelchair in front of everyone and had no idea her father was watching the whole thing. This is the kind of story that makes you stop and think about how we treat people we think have no power. Because in one ordinary afternoon inside a regular store, one man's cruelty and one stranger's kindness set off a chain of events nobody saw coming. Stay with me, because the ending of this story is something else. Her name was Lily, 12 years old, light brown hair, always had a notebook in her bag because she liked to draw. She used a wheelchair, had been for about a year, after her condition got worse following her mother's passing. Her dad, Richard, did his best to make sure she had as much independence as possible. So sometimes she'd go into a store by herself while he parked the car or grabbed something nearby. He trusted her. She was responsible. She knew what she was doing. That day, she rolled through the electronics section, looking at nothing in particular, just browsing the way kids do. And when she reached the exit doors, the alarm went off. She froze. She hadn't taken anything. She knew that. But when you're 12, sitting in a wheelchair, and a loud alarm starts blaring and people turn to look at you, you don't feel innocent. You feel guilty just from the attention alone. The manager was there in less than a minute. His name isn't important, but his attitude is. He came in fast, stood over her, and didn't ask a single question. He just pointed at her bag and said in front of everyone in that store, "Empty it. Right now. Not quietly. Not privately. Right there in the open near the exit, where every person walking in or out could stop and stare." And people did stop. Some recorded on their phones. Some just watched. Most kept walking. Lily's hands were shaking. She tried to explain herself, but the manager cut her off. 2 security guards stood on either side of her like she was a flight risk. A 12-year-old girl, in a wheelchair, being treated like a criminal because an alarm malfunctioned. That's when Marcus walked over. Marcus was 32, a single dad, worked a logistics job that paid just enough to keep the lights on. He had his own daughter to pick up from daycare in 20 minutes, half a cart of groceries, and zero reason to get involved in someone else's problem. But he'd seen that look on Lily's face before. That look that says nobody is coming to help me. He left his cart where it was and walked straight into the middle of it. "What's going on?" The manager turned around, already irritated. "Sir, this doesn't involve you. Step back." Marcus didn't move. He looked at Lily and asked her, calm and direct, what happened. She told him exactly what she told the manager. She hadn't taken anything. The alarm went off when she passed the door, and she didn't know why. Marcus looked back at the manager. "Has anyone actually checked the bag yet?" "We were getting to that." "Then let's get to it." The manager, now with an audience watching him, opened Lily's backpack. Water bottle, notebook, phone, a pen. Nothing from the store. No merchandise. No removed security tags, nothing. The manager stared at it for a second and then said the alarm still going off was reason enough to file a report. Marcus said, "Alarms malfunction. That's not evidence. That's a glitch." There was a long pause, the kind where everyone in earshot is holding their breath. The manager backed down. Not gracefully, not with an apology, but he backed down. He told Lily they'd need her name and a contact number, took the information she gave him, and walked away like he hadn't just publicly accused a child of stealing in front of a store full of people. "No, sorry, not even close." Marcus stayed. He helped Lily roll over to a bench near the entrance, sat down next to her, and waited. She told him he didn't have to. He told her he knew. About 15 minutes later, a man walked in through the front doors and moved across that store, like he had somewhere urgent to be. He wasn't wearing anything flashy. Simple dark sweater, plain trousers, nothing that would make you look twice. He found Lily, crouched down beside her wheelchair, held her face in his hands, asked if she was okay. Then she pointed at Marcus. The man stood up, walked over, and put out his hand. "Richard Hale." Marcus shook it. "Marcus, I really didn't do much." Richard looked at him the way people look at you when they've already made up their mind about something. "You stayed. That means everything." They talked for a few minutes. Marcus told him what happened, gave him the manager's name, and said goodbye to Lily. She gave him a small wave. He left, picked up his daughter from daycare, made dinner, helped with homework, and went to sleep on the couch. He thought that was the end of it. 2 days later, an unknown number called him. It was Richard Hale's assistant. Richard Hale, the assistant explained, was the founder of a logistics and supply chain company with operations across 14 states. He had pulled back from public life 3 years ago after his wife died, putting all his focus into Lily and looking for something worth pouring his energy into again. He had been watching from across the store when everything happened with Lily. He saw the manager. He saw the guards. He saw the crowd that did nothing. And he saw Marcus. The assistant said Mr. Hale would like to sit down with him. No pressure, just a conversation. Marcus almost said no. He'd been let down enough times by things that sounded too good to be real. but something told him to say yes. He showed up to that meeting in his interview jacket, the one he'd had since he was 26. Richard was already there. No assistant, no entourage, just 2 coffees and 2 chairs. He didn't ask Marcus about his resume. He asked about his life, his daughter, what he wanted, what kept him awake at night. Marcus told him the truth. He was barely keeping up. But he had an idea he'd been sitting on for 2 years, a transportation service built, specifically for people with mobility issues. Affordable, reliable, and actually run by people who cared. He'd sketched the whole thing out in a notebook. He just had no money to start it, and no idea if he ever would. Richard was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My daughter waits 40 minutes for accessible transport on a good day. On a bad day, it just doesn't show up." He leaned forward. "Let's build it." That handshake in the store turned into a real partnership. Richard brought the funding and the connections he'd spent 20 years building. Marcus brought the idea, the work ethic, and the kind of understanding that only comes from actually needing something yourself. 8 months later, they had a small fleet of vehicles running in their city. 18 months after that, they were operating in 4 cities and had a waiting list of drivers who wanted to join. Lily came to the launch event. She sat right at the front, in her wheelchair, in a white dress, watching everything come together. When Marcus spotted her across the room, she gave him the same quiet little wave she'd given him in the store that day. He'd helped her because it was the right thing to do. Not because he thought anything would come from it. Not because he calculated any kind of reward. He just saw a kid being treated badly and decided he wasn't going to walk past. Here's what this story keeps coming back to. Most people walked past Lily that day. They saw what was happening. They had the exact same opportunity Marcus had, and they kept moving. Some of them even had their phones out, and nobody did a thing. One person stopped. One person with his own problems, his own stress, his own tight schedule. And that one moment, just staying, changed both their lives. You never know who you're helping when you help someone. You never know what one small act of basic decency is going to set in motion. That's not a reason to help people. The reason to help people is just because it's right. But sometimes the world surprises you.